The Rising Storm. For 3,000 years, the Valdurian Empire had reigned unchallenged across the stars. Their sleek obsidian ships prowled the void between worlds, extracting tribute from 100 different species. The Valdurians themselves were tall, skeletal beings with iridescent scales and six-fingered hands, evolved from apex predators on a world of permanent twilight. They possessed technology centuries beyond their nearest rivals, and their empire spanned thousands of light years in every direction. Earth learned of their existence by accident. A deep space relay station picked up fragments of Valdurian communications, translated after months of painstaking work by the finest linguists and AI systems humanity could muster. The message was simple. Scouts had identified Sol as the next system marked for integration. Within 5 years, the Valdurians would arrive, and humanity would join the ranks of their subjugated peoples. Earth's nations, for once united by a common threat, pooled their resources in a desperate gamble. If they couldn't match the Valdurians for numbers, perhaps they could create something the Empire had never faced before, a warship that could challenge their technological supremacy. The project was codenamed Harbinger, and it consumed nearly 20% of Earth's combined industrial output for 4 straight years. In a hidden shipyard orbiting Jupiter, the massive vessel took shape, a kilometer-long arrow of dark metal housing experimental technologies developed in secret laboratories across the solar system. Quantum-entangled communications, adaptive shield matrices, phased plasma weapons that could collapse the molecular bonds of almost any known material, and most critically, a revolutionary propulsion system that bent space-time itself, allowing the Harbinger to travel faster and more efficiently than any Valdurian craft. Captain Maya Chen stood in the observation lounge, watching as the final components were maneuvered into place by construction drones. At 39, she had risen through the ranks of the unified Earth Defense Force, with a reputation for tactical brilliance and unflinching resolve. The daughter of a quantum physicist and a marine biologist, Chen had inherited an analytical mind and an intuitive understanding of complex systems. She'd been the natural choice to command humanity's greatest hope. Impressive, isn't she? Admiral Khatri said, stepping up beside her. The aging Indian officer had overseen the Harbinger project from its inception. She is, Chen replied, her dark eyes following the smooth lines of the ship's hull. But will she be enough? Khatri sighed. She has to be. Our latest intelligence suggests the Valdurian vanguard will reach our outer colonies within 6 months, sooner than we anticipated. Chen nodded, her expression hardening. Then we'd better make sure we're ready. The crew of the Harbinger represented the best humanity had to offer. 400 specialists drawn from every corner of Earth and its colonies. Chen's executive officer, Commander Jackson Hayes, had been a legendary test pilot before a freak accident left him with a cybernetic leg. Dr. Aiko Nakamura headed the science division, her genius matched only by her social awkwardness. Chief Engineer Ramon Diaz could coax miracles from the most recalcitrant machinery, while Security Chief Nadia Volkov had once single-handedly held off pirates attacking a civilian transport for 6 hours until help arrived. They were an eclectic group, but Chen knew they shared one critical trait, a refusal to accept defeat, no matter the odds. The Harbinger's maiden voyage was meant to be a simple shakedown cruise to the edge of the solar system and back. But as the massive ship approached the orbit of Neptune, long-range sensors detected an anomaly. A Valdurian scout ship arrived far ahead of schedule, silently scanning Earth's defenses. They shouldn't be here yet, Hayes muttered, staring at the holographic display. Our intel was wrong, Chen finished, or they've accelerated their timetable. She studied the alien vessel, a sleek, curved shape like a predator's claw, painted in the distinctive black and violet of the Valdurian fleet. It was small by their standards, perhaps a third the size of the Harbinger, but it represented an existential threat to Earth's secrecy. If they report back about our military buildup, Nakamura left the thought unfinished. Chen's decision came without hesitation. We can't let that happen. Battle stations. The Harbinger's first engagement was brief and decisive. The Vuldurian scout, clearly not expecting resistance, attempted to flee when the human vessel approached. But the Harbinger's experimental drive closed the distance in seconds. A single burst from the phased plasma array transformed the alien ship into expanding debris. "Search the wreckage," Chen ordered. "I want to know everything we can learn about their technology, their communications, their weaknesses." The data recovered from the scout ship proved invaluable. Vuldurian technology, while advanced, relied on predictable patterns. Their shields operated on fixed frequencies that could be counteracted if properly analyzed. More importantly, they had grown complacent after millennia of unchallenged dominance. Their tactics were ritualized, their responses programmed. They expected fear and submission, not innovation and defiance. And there was something else: data fragments suggesting unrest within the Empire. Several subjugated species had apparently begun small-scale resistance movements, isolated and uncoordinated but growing in strength. The Vuldurians were stretched thinner than they appeared. "This changes everything," Chen told her senior staff as they gathered in the ship's conference room. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We could be the catalyst for something much bigger." Hayes leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we take the fight to them?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Chen replied. "Before their main fleet arrives, we hit their forward bases, disrupt their supply lines, and make contact with these resistance movements. Show them that the Vuldurians can be beaten." "That's insanely risky," Volkov said, but there was a gleam of approval in her eyes. Chen's mouth curled into a determined smile. "The safest course would be to fortify Earth and wait for them to come to us." But that's exactly what they expect. They've never faced a species that took the initiative against them. We have the element of surprise, and I intend to use it. 3 weeks later, the Harbinger made its first strike against a Vuldurian outpost in the Proxima Centauri system. The Imperial forces there, accustomed to absolute dominance, were completely unprepared for the human vessel's speed and firepower. The Harbinger destroyed the outpost's defenses and communication arrays before the Vuldurians could even sound an alarm. But Chen didn't stop there. Instead of destroying the outpost itself, she led a boarding party to capture its command center. Dozens of aliens from various species, servants and slaves of the Vuldurians, watched in shock as humans in powered combat armor stormed through the facility, disabling rather than killing the Vuldurian overseers. "We are not here to conquer," Chen announced over the outpost's communication system, her words automatically translated by the Harbinger's advanced linguistics program. "We are here to liberate. The Vuldurian Empire is not invincible. Join us, and together we can end their tyranny." It was a calculated risk, but one that paid off beyond Chen's highest hopes. Many of the subjugated aliens had endured generations of Vuldurian rule, their resistance reduced to whispered dreams of freedom. Now, faced with concrete proof that the Empire could be defeated, hundreds pledged themselves to the human cause. Word of the Harbinger's victory spread rapidly through the hidden channels of resistance. The next time the human ship struck, at a major Vuldurian supply depot, they found local saboteurs had already disabled key defensive systems. The pattern repeated across a dozen worlds as Chen led her ship on a campaign of strategic disruption. Each victory brought new allies, new intelligence, and new understanding of Vuldurian weaknesses. Aliens with unique abilities joined the Harbinger's crew, bringing perspectives and skills humans had never imagined. A Tellarite engineer with 4 arms could perform maintenance tasks in half the normal time. A Neurethi navigator with special senses could detect spatial anomalies before they appeared on instruments. Together, they transformed the Harbinger from a powerful warship into something unprecedented, a symbol of unity against oppression. 6 months into their campaign, the Harbinger faced its greatest challenge yet: a full Vuldurian battle group. 5 heavy cruisers led by a dreadnought converged on the Epsilon Indy system, where Chen had established a forward base. The Imperial Command had finally recognized the threat posed by the human vessel and committed significant forces to destroy it. They outnumber us 6-1. Hayes reported grimly as the enemy ships appeared on long-range sensors. Even with everything we've learned, those are bad odds. Chen studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. Numbers aren't everything, Commander. The Vuldurians still think in linear terms. They expect us to either flee or face them head-on. Her fingers traced a path through the Epsilon Indi system's dense asteroid field. We'll do neither. What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. The Harbinger used the asteroid field as cover, striking at the Vuldurian formation and withdrawing before they could respond effectively. Chen exploited the enemy's rigid command structure. The dreadnought issued orders that took precious seconds to reach the cruisers, creating gaps in their coordination that the more nimble human ship could exploit. One by one, the Vuldurian cruisers were disabled or destroyed. Finally, only the massive dreadnought remained, its imposing bulk bristling with weapons yet unable to bring them to bear on the elusive Harbinger. Target their bridge, Chen ordered as the human ship emerged from the asteroid field one final time. Maximum power to forward plasma arrays. The Harbinger's weapons lanced across space, bypassing the dreadnought's weakened shields and striking with surgical precision. The Vuldurian command center erupted in flame and debris, leaving the mighty vessel adrift and powerless. As the battle concluded, Chen received a transmission from Earth. Admiral Catri's holographic image appeared, his expression a mixture of pride and urgency. "Congratulations on your victory, Captain," he said. "But we've intercepted communications from the Vuldurian homeworld. They're mobilizing their entire fleet, hundreds of ships, all heading for Earth. They'd finally recognized the threat we pose." Chen exchanged glances with her diverse bridge crew, human and alien alike, united in purpose. "Then it's time for Phase 2, she said. "We've proven they can be beaten. Now we show them they can be overthrown." The tide turns. The aftermath of the battle at Epsilon Indi reverberated across Vuldurian space. For the first time in living memory, an Imperial dreadnought had been defeated in combat. The news spread like wildfire through resistance networks, whispered in the shadows of 100 subjugated worlds. A human ship called Harbinger. A captain named Chen. Symbols of the impossible becoming possible. On the Vuldurian throne world of Vulduria Prime, the response was swift and merciless. The High Command executed several fleet admirals for their failure to contain the human threat. Emperor Xalvor, his scaled visage twisted in fury, issued a decree. Every available warship was to converge on the Sol system. The humans would be made an example of, their colonies scorched to barren rock, their homeworld reduced to a shattered memorial of imperial might. Captain Chen, however, had no intention of waiting for the Vuldurian armada to reach Earth. Even as the Harbinger's crew repaired battle damage, she convened a council of resistance leaders from a dozen species. They gathered in the ship's conference room, a Darvian with crystalline skin, a pair of methane-breathing Kelborn twins, a Syntheri whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent light, and representatives from 8 other species, each with their own grievances against Vuldurian rule. "The Empire is diverting forces from across the galaxy to crush Earth," Chen explained, indicating the movement of Vuldurian fleets on a holographic star map. "They're leaving their core worlds vulnerable, creating opportunities we never expected to have." "Opportunities, yes," rumbled the Darvian, Zirex, his voice like stones grinding together. "But also risk. If they succeed against your world, any resistance will be crushed with tenfold vengeance." "Which is why we don't let them reach Earth," Chen replied. "We take the fight directly to them, to Vulduria Prime itself." A shocked silence fell across the room. The Syntheri, Lilith, drifted forward, her lights pulsing in patterns of disbelief. "No outsider has ever set foot on the throne world and lived. It is protected by defenses built over thousands of years." "True," Chen acknowledged. "But those defenses are designed to repel conventional attacks. What I'm proposing is something they won't expect. A coordinated uprising across multiple systems simultaneously, forcing them to divide their attention, while the Harbinger leads a strike force to their seat of power. The plan that emerged was audacious to the point of madness. Resistance cells on 20 key worlds would launch simultaneous attacks on Valdurian infrastructure. Meanwhile, a fleet of converted merchant vessels, crewed by a coalition of humans and former Imperial subjects, would strike at strategic military installations. In the ensuing chaos, the Harbinger would leave a small group of swift, maneuverable ships through a rarely used hyperspace corridor directly to Valduria Prime. The key to it all was information gathered from the captured dreadnought. The location of a backdoor into the Imperial defense grid, created centuries ago by a paranoid emperor who feared his own military might turn against him. If they could access this backdoor, they could temporarily disable the automated defenses surrounding the throne world. Even if we reach the surface, Hayes pointed out during the final briefing, we'll be facing the Imperial Guard, the most elite Valdurian warriors. We won't be alone, Chen said, nodding toward Nadia Volkov. The security chief had spent weeks training a mixed force of humans and aliens in specialized combat techniques, and we have something they don't: adaptability. The Valdurians have spent millennia fighting opponents who follow predictable patterns. We won't. As the day of the operation approached, Chen found herself on the Harbinger's observation deck, gazing at the stars. Admiral Caffrey's hologram appeared beside her, his expression solemn. "The defense fleet is in position around Earth," he reported. "If your plan fails." "It won't," Chen interrupted, then softened her tone. "But if it does, Earth won't go down without a fight." Caffrey studied her for a long moment. "You know, when we selected you for this command, there were those who questioned whether you had the right temperament. They said you were too willing to improvise, too quick to discard established doctrine." Chen smiled faintly. "And what did you say?" "I said that fighting an enemy like the Valdurians with conventional thinking would be suicide. We needed someone who could rewrite the rules." He returned her smile. "Looks like I was right." The coordinated uprising began precisely as planned. Across Valdurian space, resistance fighters struck at power stations, communication hubs, and military barracks. The converted merchant fleet, now armed with weapons based on the Harbinger's design, engaged Imperial patrols at key junction points. Confusion spread through the Valdurian command structure as reports flooded in from every quarter. In the midst of this carefully orchestrated chaos, the Harbinger and its small task force of 8 ships accelerated toward the ancient hyperspace corridor. The passage was treacherous, a twisted route through folded space-time that larger vessels couldn't navigate. Several of the accompanying ships suffered damage from gravitational shear, but all emerged intact near the outskirts of the Valdurian home system. "Defense grid status?" Chen asked as they approached the outer perimeter. "Active but disorganized," reported Lieutenant Park from Tactical. "They're responding to multiple phantom signals." "The virus is working." The virus, a brilliant piece of programming created by Dr. Nakamura and a Kelborn resistance hacker, had infiltrated the Imperial defense network through the backdoor they'd discovered. It wasn't powerful enough to disable the defenses completely, but it created massive confusion, causing automated weapons platforms to target non-existent threats. The Harbinger and its escorts slipped through the gaps, accelerating toward Valduria Prime, a massive world shrouded in perpetual twilight, its surface dominated by sprawling cities of black stone and violet light. Orbital defense stations tracked them but fired wildly, their targeting systems compromised. "We have a narrow window," Chen announced shipwide. "Strike teams, prepare for deployment. Engineering, maintain shield modulation. This isn't over until we reach the Imperial Citadel." The Harbinger performed a high-speed atmospheric insertion, its advanced shields glowing cherry red as they absorbed the heat of entry. Below, the Imperial capital spread out like a web of dark geometry, centered around the massive citadel, a mountain of obsidian crystal housing the throne room and the central nodes of Valdurian power. Valdurian interceptors rose to meet them, but they were too few and too late. The Harbinger's point defense systems kept them at bay while shuttles launched from its ventral bay, carrying strike teams toward key targets across the city. Chen led the primary assault force, their destination the citadel itself. The fighting was intense. Imperial guards, their biomechanical armor making them twice the size of an average Valdurian, contested every meter of ground. But the mixed human-alien strike force fought with unprecedented coordination. Tellarate engineers hacked security systems. Neurethi scouts detected ambushes before they were sprung. Humans and Darvians moved in practice tandem, covering each other's vulnerabilities. Step by bloody step, they advanced through the citadel's labyrinthine corridors. Chen, her combat armor scared and smoking from energy impacts, led from the front. She had studied Valdurian architecture obsessively during the voyage, the way their buildings always mirrored their hierarchical society, with power literally flowing from top to bottom. "The throne room will be at the highest point," she said as they reached a vast central atrium, and the defense grid control node directly beneath it. Volkov, bleeding from a gash across her forehead, checked the remaining power in her plasma rifle. "Which do we hit first?" "Both," Chen replied. "Volkov, take half our force to the defense grid. If you can shut it down completely, our fleet can move in to support us. I'll lead the rest to deal with Emperor Xalvor." The assault on the throne room was met with fanatical resistance. The Emperor's personal guard fought to the last warrior, their devotion to their ruler transcending self-preservation. But they fell nonetheless to the combined might of humans fighting for their future and former slaves fighting for their freedom. Emperor Xalvor awaited them in the cavernous throne room, his ancient body enhanced by cybernetic implants, wielding a ceremonial energy glaive with surprising strength. His 4 crimson eyes burned with hatred as Chen approached. "You think this changes anything, human?" he hissed. "I have ruled for 7 centuries. I have crushed 100 rebellions. Your species will be forgotten dust while my empire endures." "Your empire is already falling," Chen replied, gesturing to the holographic displays around the throne that showed battles raging across Valdurian space. "Not because we're stronger, but because you never understood the power of cooperation. Every species you conquered, you kept isolated from the others, afraid they might unite against you. That was your mistake." The Emperor attacked with surprising speed, his glaive slicing through the air where Chen had stood a moment before. She countered with her own energy blade, the weapons crackling as they met. "You have courage, I grant you that," Xalvor said as they circled each other. "But courage is not enough to overthrow millennia of dominion." "It's not just courage," Chen replied. "It's something your kind has forgotten. Adaptation. You've been stagnant for so long, you've forgotten how to change." Their duel continued, the ancient emperor's experience matched against Chen's quickness and innovative fighting style. She didn't need to defeat him, only to keep him occupied while her allies secured the throne room and Volkov's team reached the defense grid. The decisive moment came when the citadel shuddered violently. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power failed. "Defense grid is down." Hayes's voice came through Chen's comm unit. "Repeat, planet-wide defenses are offline." Xalvor's concentration broke for just an instant, but it was enough. Chen's blade found a gap in his guard, slicing through the cybernetics that kept the ancient ruler alive. The Emperor collapsed, his multifaceted eyes dimming as he stared up at her. "How?" he whispered. "How could one species undo what took thousands of years to build?" Chen deactivated her blade and knelt beside the dying ruler. "We didn't do it alone. That's what you never understood. Real strength comes from unity, not domination." With the Emperor's death and the defense grid disabled, the battle for Valduria Prime reached its climax. The Harbinger, rejoined by its escorts and reinforced by ships from the Resistance fleet, established orbital supremacy. Across the capital, Valdurian forces found themselves surrounded by former subjects now armed and organized against them. High command surrendered within hours, their authority collapsing in the face of their emperor's defeat. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as news spread. The unthinkable had happened. The Eternal Empire had fallen. In the days that followed, representatives from dozens of formerly subjugated species converged on Valduria Prime. The Citadel's throne room, once the exclusive domain of imperial power, became the setting for something unprecedented. A galactic council where all voices were equal. Captain Chen, invited to represent Earth in these historic proceedings, surveyed the diverse gathering with quiet satisfaction. The Harbinger had achieved what seemed impossible months earlier, not just saving humanity from subjugation, but helping to forge a new interstellar community based on mutual respect rather than dominance. What happens now? Hayes asked as they stood on a balcony overlooking the transforming capital city, where the rigid black architecture was already being modified with elements from 100 different cultures. Chen watched as a group of human engineers worked alongside Tellarites and Valdurians. Yes, even some Valdurians had joined the new order, younger generations eager to atone for their species' history, to convert a military barracks into a cultural exchange center. Now comes the hard part, she replied. Building something that lasts. Fighting is simple compared to creating. Will it work? Hayes wondered. So many different species, so many conflicting interests. Chen smiled. It has to. We've proven what we can accomplish together. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the impossible just takes a little longer. As night fell over the city, lights of 100 different colors replaced the uniform violet of imperial rule. The Harbinger, docked in high orbit, gleamed in the last rays of the system's sun, no longer a lone defender against tyranny, but the beginning of something far greater. Humanity had reached the stars expecting to fight for survival. Instead, they had helped forge a new galaxy, one where diversity was strength and the future, at last, belonged to everyone.